Hello. Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Trying to brave this terrible weather. I don't know what it's like in LA, but it is raining up a storm up here. It's
It's
terrible.
pretty gloomy, and we're expected to get rain today, which I am a fan of because we don't get that rain often. So,
Yeah, you get hardly any rain. Although I'm thinking about moving to Southern California because I hear the weather's much nicer than it is here.
where are you? You're
San Jose.
San Jose.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little colder, a little foggier. I like that kind of weather, but
Oh,
I'm crazy.
are you originally from here or are you from
Tech,
out of state?
Technically, I'm an army brat, but I was born in Southern California, but I moved away after I was 3 months old, and I didn't grow up here.
Oh, okay. So you're
Maybe it's what?
technically actually not a native Californian, even though you kind of are.
Yeah, I let's see. I'm a biological Californian, but
California was a country, you would have been a citizen of California, right?
yeah, exactly, exactly. I wish it was a country. Can we make that happen?
Who knows? It still may happen. Who knows? It's entirely possible.
Baja, Canada, here we come.
I had a friend of mine back in 2016 saying, "That's it, California is going to secede," and I'm like, "Okay, hasn't happened yet, but maybe we're on the way. We're on the way."
There were some days where I certainly wished for it, and maybe I will again. I don't know.
We're
I
kind
think,
of self-sustaining. We are pretty self-sustaining, so we could
yeah,
conceivably
I
secede.
feel like if we could just break off Washington and Oregon and just become, yeah, Baja, Canada.
Yeah. Well, you've heard of Pacifica, right? The
Yeah,
state where they're thinking about like BC all the way down to Baja California, and then just making
yeah,
it one long country,
I love
like
it.
Peru or something like that. I'd be up for that. Totally be up for that. Awesome. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your organization, and what you're passionate about?
Oh gosh. Oh, I didn't even notice. We're already recording. Okay. We just
I
jumped
like to
right
come in hot. I'm coming in hot.
in. Okay. A little bit about myself. Well, as I told you, I'm an army brat, and I think that actually was foundational to shaping my personality because I went to a different school every single year until seventh grade, and so that made me really comfortable with change, and that has
Mm.
served me very well as an adult and in my career. I think comfort with change is yeah, it's been very, very helpful. My current role, I'm the director of impact innovation at Philosophie. That's Philosophie with an
I
I.
love the name of that company, by the way, because I am a philosophy major.
Oh, well, then you might be familiar with the phrase, all work is an act of philosophy.
Hmm.
That was the
Absolutely.
inspiration for the name of the company, and it resonated really strongly with me. I spent a long time in advertising and in large scale software systems before earlier in my career. I worked at Huge and Crispin Porter and Bogusky, doing all manner of digital media campaigns and
Hmm.
digital marketing websites and sometimes product development, but more often it was media and marketing focused. And when I left that, I started my own company. It was a fashion tech startup focused on non-toxic nail designs.
Nice. Something
Yeah.
that we need. Something that we need. 'Cause
Well,
every time I go into one of those places, I feel like I'm going to keel over.
yeah, actually the health risks to the employees is pretty substantial, but also there was a study in 2015 from Duke University that showed that there were endocrine disruptors leaching into women's bodies through their fingernails that were disrupting their fertility, disrupting their immunohealth. And when you think about the fact that we market nail polish to girls as young as 5,
Mm.
it's kind of creepy. So I
Yeah.
thought I want to give people a way to be very creative with their nail designs without the health implications or all the packaging issues, all the bottles that go into landfills filled with chemicals. So that was fun. I did that for 5 years. And then we had an exit in 2019, and I started consulting for Philosophie and sort of fell in love with the organization. It's a really unique place. We've actually won Best Workplace 2 years in a row. And
Nice.
yeah, it's an incredible place to work. There's a very flat hierarchy, and the two founders are still very much crafts people who are involved in evolving the team's good, best practices. And they also just have really, really good energy that trickles down through the corporation. And especially now when everything's remote, being able to foster a culture where people feel that can be authentic and be their real selves, I think it's kind of an amazing feat to pull off. And so far, so good.
Yeah, it's really tough to be inclusive when you're like on the other side of a screen.
Right?
It's almost
Well, it's also hard. I mean, just to stay focused. I mean, I find myself, I've got this monitor, another monitor. So I've got a lot of things happening, and this monitor. So I've got all these different pings and little windows popping up, and oh, I got to make sure I don't forget this. So like the multitasking and the lack of focus right now is like something that I'm presently trying to work on. I'm doing Pomodoro techniques where I'll do like a little 20-minute chunks of something.
yeah, I'm actually doing that myself.
Oh,
it's not working too well though.
Yeah.
So, I got this, it's a plugin to Chrome called Marinara.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I started at 20 and then I kept changing it. And then I'm like, okay, this isn't working for me. And then sometimes I'm in the middle of a podcast and it pops up and I'm like, oh, I got to turn that off.
Sorry, that's my marinara sauce boiling in the background.
Right. I wish it were. At least it would smell good.
Yeah. So to answer your question, because I kind of went way around my ass to get to my elbow. I am passionate about making things better. I really like working on systems and services and making them so that people don't go crazy. And right now you can see how so many systems and services that we rely on have a lot of explaining to do and need to be. There's a lot of opportunity for improvement. So I'm happy to be putting my passion towards that.
Oh, there's an absolute huge disconnect between these things. I mean, I wrote a blog post about this. Like, technology products should just work, right? I remember when I bought my first smart bulb, and it took me like 20 minutes to 20 minutes to figure it out. And then every time the power goes out, I had to reconfigure it again. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I should be able to take it out of the box, screw it in, and be done.
Yeah.
It should like ping my phone and say, hey, I'm set up, which network do you want me to connect to, yada, yada. And none of that happens. It's like, you gotta be a techie to be able to figure these things out, and they should be figure outable. I mean, it's technology. We just need to go that extra mile to just make it happen by itself.
Well, I think that's one of the things about product design. It's not just designing the product, it's designing the ecosystem in which the product lives and all of the different communication touch points that go along with it, especially when you're creating a product that is fairly new or novel. So like, a smart light bulb. You don't want to have to buy, the smart light bulb book for dummies in order to plug in a damn light bulb. But the unboxing, I think, Apple's been historically so good at that, making the box feel simple so you don't feel overwhelmed when you open it. I actually just had this experience with a SodaStream, which everybody raves about. And I like sparkling water, and we got SodaStreams as our holiday gift this year. And I plugged mine in, and the canister didn't screw the way that it showed in the instructions. So I had to call for the thing. Then they tell me how to screw it in, but it still isn't working. So then they sent me another canister and a flavor to like make up for the bad experience so far. But I plugged it in, and it carbonated, but I remember thinking it's not that carbonated. And then when I first pressed the button, it like actually exploded all over me because there was nothing in it. And I was just like, oh, how does everybody love this product? I'm really frustrated right now. Yeah, the jury's still out on the SodaStream, but I think that the design of product communication is so crucial. especially when you're designing something that's really, really a new experience for people, holding their hands so that they feel smart and empowered for doing this new cool thing, rather than frustrated and, oh Jesus, I'll just drink tap water.
Exactly. And I'm a big proponent of the DIFM as opposed to DIY, because it seems there's so many companies who are like, well, if we just gave their customers more tools so they could do it themselves, then they'd be happy. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do any of that. I mean, it reminds me of, do you have Apple Card?
I don't.
Okay, so when Apple Card first came out, I wanted to try it out to see how it would work, and it was so effortless. You just go on your app and you apply for it. It shows up, and then all you do is you take it out and you tap it against your phone, or you bring it close to your phone, and it's activated and it's done. And after that, I barely used it because you don't get as many points on the card, the physical card. But it was the most amazing experience. And I'm thinking, why can't all tech products be like this? I mean, they can be. It's just that we don't seem to go the extra mile. And I don't know what's stopping us.
Well, it's hard. And a lot of times designers will get paid to create a product, but not paid to spend the time and energy on all of the other touch points that create that product experience. Or a company, a struggling startup just won't have the energy to focus on it. It's not that they don't want to, but there's so many fish to fry. They're getting their patent and they're trying to raise money, and it's a challenge. Doing really good product work is hard, and it takes a lot of time and thoughtfulness to get it right, and a lot of iteration. And it's about commitment to that. And then also, the collaboration that's required. If you think about like a government website, which many of them are not helpful.
You're very tactful. Very tactful. I love it.
Yeah, there's so many different organizations that have to share information, so many competing voices, and then maybe there's like a person who's in charge of synthesizing all of that and trying to make sense of it. That person might not even be a designer. They might be a policy agent or an administrative assistant. And they're not even, technically a designer. So then them having to do all that information architecture and also synthesizing it down so it's digestible for a normal non-government person, it's a tremendous job. And with so many things, I think, shifting to this kind of always remote world, we're going to need to get really, really much better at the systems that we have in place for being a citizen, whatever that means, like your DMV stuff, paying your taxes, all of your citizenly duties, and then also your healthcare. All of that needs to be rethought. As we're seeing now, the breakdown of both of those at the same time can be real painful and potentially be a contributing factor in, the collapse of a country.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm seeing that it's kind of like you can look at it two ways. I mean, I'm kind of like, on the one hand, I'm hating it, but on the other hand, I'm loving it because the disruption is forcing all this change on people. And it's almost gets me to the point where, everyone talks about being innovative and changing and doing all these new things, but unless something serious happens to disrupt them into doing it, then it never happens. And this is something serious. It's pushing people into disrupting themselves, and it's a good thing, and it might end up being a good thing in the end for everybody.
Absolutely. I think there's the old saying, of course, necessity is the mother of innovation.
Yeah.
Maybe it's invention. I'm bastardizing that quote, but you get my point.
Yeah.
I think about it in terms of like, it's a mirror to what happens in people's health. You'll have like a young, healthy person who will get diagnosed with cancer. And suddenly they realize, oh, well, I'm not overweight and I'm not drinking every day, but I'm not necessarily healthy. And then they go on this journey of self-discovery that leads them to become, more physically active and change their diet to actually be healthy and cut out sugar and caffeine and all the other stuff that they were unconsciously putting in their body because they didn't see an effect. So I think right now we are having a health crisis, literally and figuratively, that's going to precipitate a ton, hopefully, of positive change. or it's going to kill us, literally going to
Right.
kill us.
May do either one.
Yeah.
But I mean, the fact that the thing that's driving me crazy though is that if people seem to only change when there's disruption, it's almost like you should not just invite it, but you should sort of create it. You know, let's say never let a crisis go to waste. Maybe we should create crises to drive people into disruption. I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like we're doing a pretty good job of just organically having crises. I don't know if there needs to be a crisis instigation machine. And
Right.
truthfully, I guess maybe better put is there are so many crisis instigation machines already out there.
Right.
So I
You
don't
don't
know.
need any more.
Yeah.
It's just what we do with them, right?
Yeah.
So how have you been innovating through this crisis?
That is a great question. Well, I can tell you what Philosophie has been doing for clients.
Mhm.
We have a methodology that we call experiment-driven design, and that's it's a kind of a unique approach. And I'm going to describe it, and it's going to sound really simple. But what we do is we take like a large, ambitious idea, and we'll break it down to test different pieces of it. Now, that's not a new thing, but what we do is we try to target what the most risky assumption is in the list of things that we could do. So I'll give you like a simple example. You know, a company comes to us and says, "Oh, we want to build a website to get people to brush their teeth with charcoal." None of this is a real company that we're working with. And you know, it needs to have really like easy, you know, checkout so that when they want to buy, that's really easy. You know, can you comp this out for us? You know, and we'll say sure, and they'll say, okay, we want this really like slick checkout, and we'll say, you know, the checkout isn't really the part that you got to worry about. It's people are going to want to brush their teeth with this new thing. You've got,
Right.
you know, 100 years of marketing teaching people that the most effective thing is something that comes out of a tube, preferably something that's got the word whitening in it or fluoride in it, maybe. And this stuff doesn't come out of a tube. And when you're brushing your teeth, it doesn't make them sparkly white. So changing people's minds about that is going to be the risky assumption that we have to kind of kick the tires on first. So we'll do really lo-fi tests early on, sometimes like paper prototypes, or demand tests with like paid, you know, fake pages that land to nowhere to just see who's clicking on them. And when we are able to do those early lo-fi tests, you know, we can fail fast on the little things so that we don't fail, you know, spectacularly on the big thing. And it makes a huge difference. It allows us to move really quickly, and it has helped us to help our customers innovate. That's what we've been doing with our clients. And especially right now when, you know, over the past year, there's been so much budget uncertainty for a lot of companies. Being able to validate ideas in a really fast, affordable way so that they can make calculated bets and move forward with more certainty and clarity has been tremendously valuable. That's probably one of the most valuable things that we offer clients. Internally, we've been innovating with new ways of collaboration, because previously we would get together and a lot of time was spent around whiteboards with Post-its. So we've been experimenting with different tools to allow for collaboration. Some of them are tools that we're, you know, using from other entities like Mural or Miro, which are kind of like fancy whiteboard systems where a bunch of people can get together and put squares and arrows and start mapping something out. We also created some of the tools that we find most useful. So even though Mural has a ability to dot vote on certain things, we found the interface was really overwhelming, especially for clients who are like, oh, I've never used this before. And then if you get too many people on a board, suddenly the lines go all kablooey.
Oh yeah.
We just need a simple way to allow people to write things on a Post-it and stick them up on a wall so we can like dot vote on Post-its and have a conversation. So we created a tool called Dot Voter. It's actually free. So nice. People can, I'll share it with you after this in case people want to check it out. So it's a free tool that lets people create stickies, and then the creator of the sticky board, can say, let's talk about things that went well in this project, and everybody can make a sticky or a Post-it, a virtual Post-it for one idea of something that went well. And then everybody can see, after private ideation, everybody can see what everybody else wrote, and then everybody gets a vote, and you can, give people 2 votes or 5 votes or however many, and then those get moved up to the top so you can facilitate a conversation. Super simple, real easy for clients.
That is a fantastic idea, and I will use that in my next ideation session on Monday. Absolutely. Yeah. We need something like that. It's impossible. I mean, I've had a number of ideation sessions over the last little while, and all the tools are overbuilt. Overbuilt. You just need something super, super simple, and nobody has anything like that. So I'm definitely going to be using that.
Oh, I'm glad. I hope it's provides fruitful discussion for you. So that's what we've been doing, like on internal and in terms of like making ourselves, better able to collaborate and be productive. And then on the human side of things, we've been experimenting with daily stand-ups in like the whole company, and then we have like daily stand-up pods that will break. So on Monday and Friday it's everybody, and then in the middle of the week it's just like smaller groupings, so you can have a little bit more intimate conversations. We have new Slack channels that opened up for meme of the week, DJ. We've got like new ways to be together even though we can't physically be together. And we, play games. We actually do movie night. So it's really important to us to continue fostering communication and like real sense of community in between the team, because if you get along really fabulously with your teammates, you're probably going to do better work.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's a lot of companies have just basically forgotten about that part of things. They've just said, we got to be home and, get online for meetings, and that's it, and then you've got your solitary work. But, the collaborative aspect has just disappeared, and all communications is now intentional. You have to, make that connection. You can't just have serendipitous, conversations anymore. Those are gone.
And that's the thing. It's like we're working out ways to trigger spontaneous conversations. And I find myself, I'm calling more of my colleagues through Slack rather than slacking them something. I'll just call them really quick, just so I can have a little bit of face-to-face interaction like this. And it makes a huge difference, because not only, does the team get along better and have an actual rapport, I can ask a person about how their day was. And if somebody's like maybe snippy in a meeting, instead of taking umbrage and maybe like having a ripple effect that, ruins my day, I can back channel them and be like, hey, are you okay? Like, because I know you and I like you, and you normally wouldn't act that way. You're my friend. So it's proven to be really helpful. And it's also been great for our clients. We were working with a large media company, and one of the reasons they said they immediately, as soon as our engagement was done, they signed up for another engagement, and they said, nice. We love the weekly happy hours with you guys. Which were like happy hour / retro, but a cocktail, we need to be able to still get together and have a beer after work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So how do you do that? Well,
absolutely.
You do it.
That's totally essential. Yeah, but we should just, companies have just seem to have just said, it's not happening anymore. But I mean, it's essential to keep that connection going.
Yeah, it's really important. Culture is like a garden, software is like a garden, and any garden that's left unattended is just going to get overgrown with weeds.
Yeah. But I love that example that you gave, because if you think about it, I mean, some of that stuff wouldn't even work in real life, right? I mean, you'd have to, it'd be really awkward to do stuff like that, but you're actually describing an experience that's better than in person. And I think that's what we have to look for.
In real life.
Sorry?
Which ones could you not do in real life?
No, I mean, if you have to surreptitiously pull somebody over to the side and say, hey, if you think about it, you have a back channel going on at the same time as the meeting's happening, right? Yeah. So, and that's the thing I was always talking about, is that So I do some work with that for the IFTF. And you familiar with those suitable technology beam robots, where it's like on a stand and you can drive around, and and they were always trying to make the interface as close to human as possible. So they figured they made it the height of a typical person, and you made the size of the screen typical. And I'm like, you guys are doing it all wrong. You have to go beyond that. You have to leverage the technology to make it a better experience than being in person. So I think some of the stuff that you're talking about is doing just that, is that you can have these sort of simultaneous back channel communications in chat or whatever at the same time as the meeting is going on, and deal with these issues simultaneously, instead of having to wait till afterwards where you can pull them aside and do whatever. So I think some of the stuff that a remote actually facilitates is actually better than being in person.
God, you just gave me flashbacks of when I was working at an agency, and we were working on a robot for the creative wall, so that like if a person was in the New York office and the creative teams were working in the Boulder office, the robot could go and scan the wall and like be the same height, so you could have a conversation with the creative director in another office. And it was so easy. And as you were saying that, I was like, God, it would have been better if it had been like a fly on the wall, like a spy camera across the wall that could take a picture of the whole thing, give me a speeded up view of who's at the wall so I can actually see all that, and then zoom into different parts of it at any given time. And then it would have been way better than a dumb, robot version of me.
Exactly.
Yeah. This is
exactly. And I think that's what happens, is that a lot of times we stop at, we need to make this as good as in real life, but it's like, no, keep going, make it better, make it better.
Yeah, I think parity with physical world is too often the goal, and we need to set higher benchmarks for ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I love the thing you said at the very beginning, where you said you were an Army brat and you moved around a lot. You made you comfortable with change. And I'm thinking that would be a great thing for everybody. Maybe we should force everybody to move around a lot and to make them more comfortable with change.
Yeah.
I mean, you find the people who grew up like that are actually more flexible and innovative?
Absolutely. Well, I don't know about innovative, but I feel like, there's a certain depression I think that people have when things that they get used to change. And there is a strange attachment people have to, getting something good and holding on to it. I mean, like you think about marriage, till death do us part. I'm going to marry you as you are. And I really don't want you to change that much. I like who this is, but like, especially if you get married in your 20s, like, come on, that person's going to change a lot. And so are you. And when you think about like the divorce rate being as high as it is, I think it's because people get very attached to locking something in and wanting that thing to stay forever. And nothing in this world is built to last forever, including the world. This planet's not lasting forever. Like galaxy won't last forever. Eventually we're going to get sucked up into the black hole, like
entropy.
So
what about entropy?
when you can embrace change, which sounds very cliche, but when you can actually like understand that the only constant should be change, it allows you to, it's kind of like a Buddhist thing. You can suddenly start to be non-grasping, non-attaching, not to say that you don't care, but understanding that this is all things are, impermanent, and that's beautiful. And you can also design for that impermanence in a more kind of thoughtful way. Right now, I think we design for impermanence in a kind of nefarious intentionality, where we're actually trying to design a way to get you to buy the next iteration. But what's a better way that we can serve people that thinks about the longevity and the unintended consequences of having to put more stuff into the world? And is there a better way to create a lifelong customer without creating a lifelong garbage trail behind them?
Right. Well, that's the problem with any kind of product, right? I mean, you're always looking at that, like how do you balance, not creating too much with profitability, right? I mean, how do you balance these things out?
Well, I think, Netflix is interesting because it shifted away from a brick and mortar store that relied on the creation of physical medium to a system where now there is no physical medium and I have access to all of this in perpetuity. And so I'm a subscriber, but like my landfill now has gone down because I'm not buying DVDs anymore, or
Yep.
VHS, perish the thought.
Well, I always think that, so you must have seen that article that said there's more human stuff created now than like the weight of the planet. So I'm a big believer in reuse, because if you think about it, everything that we have, everything that we buy new, there's probably a slightly used version that someone else out there is not using anymore. And if we could just connect you to that slightly used version or even more used version or whatever of that thing, then we could really go a long way to reducing the amount of extra stuff that we create for no reason.
It's not a new idea. I think there are people who are scratching at making that happen in a lot of different frontiers. There was a really amazing startup here in LA by a woman named Mickey Reynolds called Neighbor Goods. And the idea was that you could put up, on Neighbor Goods, I have a lawnmower, and then everybody on the block could just borrow your lawnmower and nobody else would have to buy a lawnmower. Why do we all need to have a lawnmower? I don't even have a garage to put a lawnmower in, but I do need a lawnmower from time to time. So I love the idea of access and sharing, a sharing economy, and systems that are built around access rather than acquisition. But
I think we have too much. We have too much as a culture, too much invested in ownership. Yeah. Right. We have so much invested in ownership as opposed to just use or sharing. Yeah.
But I think that that's changing. I think the idea of ownership, which used to be the goal in a lot of fronts, I want to own a car. I want to own, a impressive looking bookshelf with books that show everybody how smart I am. I want to, not to denigrate your impressive looking bookshelf.
I have more impressive looking bookshelves on the other side of my.
But I remember like back in the day, you'd have like a CD case, and when somebody came over that you were dating, it was like, let me look at your CD case to find out if you're cool enough to date. That was how you signaled who you were. And it's interesting because now I've gotten rid of, I have like some design books that I've kept as reference, but they're not in a big fancy bookshelf. Most of the books that I read now are digital, and I buy no CDs, I buy no DVDs, and I've actually stopped buying clothing. About 2 years ago, a bunch of girlfriends and I decided to start a Swap Sisters group. And every 6 months, we clear out our closets, we get together. This is before the pandemic, obviously. And you can tell that I haven't had new clothes in a while because I'm just wearing like cut off t-shirts these days. But we would get together every 6 months and just dump all of the clothes in the middle of the room and go shopping. And I have not bought new clothes in about 2.5 years because of that. It's been amazing. And I mean, some of the stuff is brand new because, the consumer culture is so ingrained into us, especially here in America. A lot of us had things that were sitting in our closets that were either barely worn, or some of them still even had the tag on them. Like, oh, I bought this dress to wear to a luncheon that I ended up wearing something else because I felt fat that day. Okay, I'll take it. That's
I'm a huge leverager. I use libraries. I download books. I listen to Audible. And then if I want to buy stuff, if I need anything, I go to Savers or Goodwill or someplace like that, because some of these things, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a book that's been slightly used. So, and people look at you like, what's wrong with you, man? Are you like a hobo?
No, I think we need to start deprogramming ourselves to be so focused on stuff and newness, and start to appreciate things that have a little bit of patina of use, and valuing things that stick around. And if something, there's like an old Shaker saying, like, if something's worth making, never hesitate to make it useful. And if you can make it useful, don't hesitate to make it beautiful.
Right.
These are the guys that make the rocking chairs that stick around for like 200 or 300 years, the beautiful wooden rocking chairs. I love that. That's the kind of stuff I want in my home. And I
Well,
don't want other stuff.
were we
And I
always
don't
like that?
need other.
Were Americans always like that, or did we just become like that recently? I mean,
I think we weren't always like that, but I mean, when we say what were Americans always like, we haven't been around that long. We've
yeah.
been only around for like 250 years. So
Mhm.
what Americans are is new and evolving. And unfortunately, I think, you know, in the last century, we had an explosion of like, you know, the creation of plastic and then the creation of factory processes and the rise of like robotics and mechanics. Suddenly we could make more stuff. And so we needed a way to make profit off of that stuff. And so we trained a whole generation of people to think that these things were a marker that you'd made it. And now it's interesting because especially right now we have so many people struggling and not actually realizing that they're in poverty because they're still in a home, you know, maybe they're renting an apartment. They can still afford to go and go grocery shopping. And I have a friend who was in this 99-cent store the other day. I don't know if 99-cent store is something across the country, but in
Oh yeah,
California,
everyone has them.
okay. In California, the 99-cent stores also have grocery departments and sometimes organic produce.
Seriously?
So yeah, seriously. So they can be a great place to shop. But in addition to, you know, buying eggs and blueberries and milk, you can buy junky toys, lots and lots of junky stuff. And my friend was like, my daughter doesn't know that we're like on the edge of like being homeless because she thinks we're rich because every time we go grocery shopping, which is at the 99-cent store, I let her buy a toy for $1. And so she has
Right.
no idea that we're in poverty. And it reminds me of myself growing up as a military kid, we were definitely working poor. And I had no clue because in America, it's easy to fake some kind of middle-class existence. And unfortunately, a lot of people have been tricked into thinking that they're middle class when they're not. They're actually economically the working poor, and they're voting against their best economic interests because they've been lied to about where they sit in
But
the
what is
spectrum.
truth? What is truth?
Oh my gosh, what is truth? I just wrote a piece on Medium about fake news because especially after the insurrection on January 6th or insurrection attempt on January 6th, I became really like, I've got to put something out there that helps people unpack their bias and start to actually get to what is true. So I posted a piece that talks about the media bias chart. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's in its sixth iteration and it shows you where, you know, news sites like CNN fall versus a site like Breitbart News, and you can see how skewed your perspective is. Even if you think that you're in the center, you might find you're actually off to one of the sides.
Yeah.
And in that, I linked to a bunch of fact checker sites to help people get to what real objective facts are. And I also linked to a thing that I just discovered last week, which I'm in love with, called ground.news. And it's so refreshing. You can go to it and subscribe to this thing called the blind spot feed. And it shows you a story that's coming up that's getting a lot of traction and widely reported for right-wing media that the left isn't seeing, and vice versa. So it's a way for people who are polarized to start seeing what's in their blind spot. I love it.
Yeah, we absolutely do need that because if you ask me, it's social media. It's Facebook and Twitter and all these social media players have created this divisive atmosphere where, you know, everyone's in their own little bubble and they just get fed the same stuff over and over again, and they're just never, these bubbles are never burst.
I agree. I agree that social media is a big problem, but I also, and as I mentioned in the post, the problem is also us. We have built-in confirmation bias. And so when a person posts something that you agree with, you are way more likely to recall facts about that story. You're way more likely to share it. So it's our own confirmation bias that's allowed social media to become the echo chamber that it is. It's kind of like, you know, McDonald's doesn't make people have obesity. It's people's desire for fat and sugar that
Yeah.
McDonald's solves. It's two sides of the same coin. We are half the problem. And we can't solve it by just telling social media to stop being the way it is. We have to
Yeah.
stop being the way we are
Yeah.
and
Social
recognize,
media is just an accelerant,
right?
basically.
We have to recognize our own complicitness in this and work actively against our own inherent natural biases.
Yeah. That's why I have this like campaign to say people, when people share stuff with me, I'll say, did you read that before you shared it? Did you actually understand it before you shared it? Did you dig into it? And they're not designed for that. It's designed for quick sharing, right? Just
Yeah.
read the headline and share. And it's like, no, 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 don't do that. You're complicit in spreading this if you don't dig into it yourself. Like, you as a person should be a little more thoughtful about what you spread.
Yeah. Well, here's hoping all of us, myself included, can be more thoughtful in 2021, because we did a hell of a job in 2020.
Let's hope, right? So speaking of the future, let's talk 2031. Where do you think things are going to be 10 years out?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, but I can talk about what I hope for. I hope for more objectivity and critical thinking. I hope that we have been able to introduce objectivity and critical thinking into school curriculums so that kids can start gaining knowledge and experience to make sense of all these divergent perspectives and recognize, a measurable, repeatable reality, something like gravity, or, the earth being
Yeah.
round, things that are measurable and provable, and shouldn't be controversial at all. And then
Yeah.
also understand the nuance of language and how the words that we choose can shape perspective and perception. So number one, I hope we're able to fix some of our objectivity and critical thinking. In terms of design, I hope that we're in a place where we have been able to become more ethical about the things that we create. I think that a lot of designers fall victim to, wanting to create something that's good for humanity, but then over time, I mean, things, we've seen this over and over, something will slip into being more about profit. And we need to really encourage people to think more critically about their creative work and take a hard look at what are some of the things that can happen if this gets abused. So I'm hoping that we are a little bit more ethical. And then finally, I hope that we are designing more systems and services with the health of humanity in mind. And I mean that, right now we talked about all the different services that are kind of broken. And we're living in a bunch of broken systems right now, but it's often the people who are most vulnerable, people of color and people in areas of economic dysfunction that are suffering the most as a result of those systems being badly designed. So I'm hopeful that we're able to use our better angels to start to work our way away from designing in that fashion. But that's going to take a lot of work, a lot of collaboration, and a lot of commitment from people who right now are still spoiling for a fight. So we have a lot of meditating to do and a lot of educating to get there.
Yeah. No, we all need to, it's like, why can't we all look towards building things that will help humans flourish, no matter who they are? I mean, why do we always have to have this, us versus them mentality? I mean, we're all human beings. We should be able to help each other. We should be able to lift each other up. And it's just so much tearing down happening that we got to turn that around.
In 100 years, I'm hopeful that work is more of a universal pursuit of creativity and happiness. Because a lot of the things that we think of as work won't need to be done by humans anymore. Many of the things that are current careers and professions will be handled by robots. And I don't just mean menial jobs, I mean like creative work as well. Like I've seen incredible ad campaigns designed by artificial intelligence. I've seen music created by artificial intelligence. I've seen, homes designed by artificial intelligence. So there's a lot of creative work that could be done by robot overlords. And maybe in 100 years, it's going to be about figuring out how do we create healthy, happy humans that just get to be.
Yeah. Do you read science fiction?
I love it.
Do you know Ian Banks and the Culture series?
No.
Oh, you gotta read this, because it's a far future post scarcity society where, you know, all of that stuff's been figured out, and all we do is look for self actualization. Like, that's it. That's all. That's what everybody does. And the only tension in the books is between this perfect human society and other societies that sort of they're not quite as advanced yet. So that's where some of the tension lies between the books. But the society itself, the culture society, is so post scarcity that basically all they're doing is worrying about, you know, what am I going to do next? How am I going to improve myself next? How can I flourish next? And it's so optimistic. It's so optimistic, and it's great. I love it. It's like all that stuff's been, all the hate and divisiveness have just disappeared, and people just, you know, want to just be better humans, basically.
Oh man, sounds like it's right up my alley. I want to be a better
Well,
human.
I'll send you links to it. Awesome. This has been fantastic. Well, I love talking with you. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, and first of all, you're going to give me the links to this tool, right? Because I'm definitely going to use it on Monday.
Yeah,
but if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Yeah, the best way to reach me is probably on Twitter. I'm just @Angel.
Nice. You got that? You got that handle? I applaud you. This is fantastic.
Yeah, that's the best way to say hello. I'm also on LinkedIn. People can email me at Philosophie. It's just angel@philosophy.is. But I'm on Twitter @Angel.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much. It's been great talking with you.
Yeah, it's been great talking with you. Thank you so much, Chris.
Of course. Talk to you later. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.